There's a subtle experience that often appears after you've left a high control system. Not fear in the obvious sense, not confusion in the way it first showed up. Something quieter than that. A pause. You're about to make a decision, sometimes a small one, and something in you hesitates. Not because you don't have options, not because you don't understand the situation, but because somewhere in the background there's a sense that you should check first. Not always with a person, sometimes just internally, as if there's a question that hasn't been answered yet. Is this okay? And even when no one is there to approve or disapprove, that question can still feel real. In high control environments, permission is rarely optional. It might not always be explicit, but it's embedded in how decisions are made, what you believe, what you prioritize, how you behave, what you're allowed to question. Over time, this creates a pattern. Before acting, you check. Before deciding, you reference something outside yourself. Before trusting your own judgment, you look for alignment. At first, that process feels normal because it's consistent, predictable, reinforced. But over time, something shifts quietly. Permission stops being external. It becomes internalized. After you leave, the external authority is gone, but the internal pattern remains. You might notice a kind of internal dialogue. Is this the right thing to do? Am I allowed to think this? Is this a good question? Or am I missing something? And what makes this difficult is that the voice asking those questions often sounds like you. It doesn't feel imposed. It feels reasonable, measured, even responsible. So instead of recognizing it as a learned pattern, it can feel like this is just me being careful. But there's a difference between thoughtful decision making and needing permission to exist in your own life. Many people assume that once the system is gone, the patterns should disappear with it. But psychological patterns don't work like that. They are learned through repetition, reinforced over time, and often linked to safety. If permission once protected you, kept you aligned, accepted, or out of trouble, your system doesn't immediately abandon it. It keeps running the same process, not because it's necessary anymore, but because it was once reliable. This pattern doesn't always feel dramatic, but it can shape your experience in subtle ways. Decisions take longer than they need to. You second guess things that felt clear a moment before. You delay action, waiting for a sense of certainty that never fully arrives. And sometimes you find yourself looking for reassurance, not because you lack insight, but because the internal habit of checking is still active. Over time, this can create a quiet kind of distance from yourself, where your own thoughts are present, but not fully trusted. It's easy to interpret this pattern as low confidence, but that's not quite accurate. Confidence is about believing in your ability to handle outcomes. Permission seeking is about whether you're allowed to act at all. Those are different processes. One is about capability, and the other is about authority. And after leaving a system where authority was external, it makes sense that your relationship to authority, even internally, takes time to adjust. What often begins to change slowly is Not the presence of the questions, but how you relate to them. You might still notice the internal check, is this okay? But alongside it, something else begins to appear. An awareness that the question itself is part of a pattern, not a rule you have to follow, just something your mind learned to do. That awareness doesn't immediately remove the hesitation, but it changes the position you're in. Instead of being inside the question, you're starting to notice it. For some people, this shift shows up in very small ways. A moment where you make a decision without fully resolving the internal check. A moment where you notice the hesitation, but don't treat it as a stop sign. Or a moment where you realize you didn't ask for reassurance, not because you forced yourself not to, but because it simply didn't occur to you. These moments are easy to overlook, but they matter because they signal something changing underneath the surface. If you still feel that pull to check, to confirm, to seek permission, that doesn't mean you're stuck. It means your system is still using a process that once made sense. And processes like that don't disappear on command. They soften gradually as your experience gives you new evidence. Not through force, not through correction, but through repetition of something different. There may not be a clear moment where permission seeking disappears. It often fades more quietly than that. One day you notice you made a decision without checking. Another day you realize that the hesitation passed more quickly than it used to. And over time, something shifts, not into certainty, but into a different kind of relationship with yourself, where your thoughts are not something to verify, but something you can consult. And that shift doesn't need to be dramatic to be real. It just needs to be steady. And steady is enough.